This is happening. This is happening right now. Welcome to Talking and Walking. This is the show where I talk and walk. I've got this set up. It's on 8/7. Everything's okay.
There's cheaper.
So, for my first time ever doing this legitly, and with the possibility of actually having it last more than 2 minutes before my phone says, your storage is full. I have this little device now. And this is the setting for the first one, and it's not exactly like the most conducive to just walking, talking, I'm sorry, I'm avoiding copyright here, without, you know, being self-conscious of the way it's being perceived by others, because one thing about Manhattan is that there's a few people in it, you know? So, but I think that's kind of a good thing. I start here, it'll be challenging. I eventually want to find a spot where I'm not constantly passing people, but I also don't want to just be sitting for a long time, because I don't think that would be like the way to do it. I want the video to be part of it, you know. I want there to be some motion. And I think one of the benefits of this is, yes, there's a ton of people, but like it's somewhat interesting footage, you know, or hopefully. Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is that I felt the desire to do this without being in, you know, like a crisis state. Without being in a crisis state the way I have in the past when I've done this, when I'm just so, you know, confused or miserable, or feel like I don't have any solid footing to stand on. That isn't the case this time. You know, I feel like I have some sort of understanding of the way that things are going in my life, and I'm like pretty reasonably satisfied with it. It's yeah, but you know, it's like the, I don't even know. Just a second. Satisfaction level, or no matter what, like, you know, like heightened plane of happiness or awareness you feel like you're relying on now, problems are just gonna arise no matter what. And sometimes it's problems that others would kill to have and would be lucky to have, consider themselves lucky. And I consider myself lucky to have a lot of what I think are my problems, because I'm in the position where I feel like this is like kind of an ideal set of circumstances for me to just be maximizing shit, whatever that means. And then so the only anxiety is whether or not I'm doing that. I'm glad I have this thing now, because now there are times, I mentioned this earlier, but there are times when I feel so confused, or whatever I thought I had feels like something that is fleeting and kind of like trying to hold on to butter in your hand or something like that. And this isn't really one of those times, so it feels a little bit more difficult to come up with. Like things that come from my heart to say, because I'm not in a crisis right now, and I'm not reeling, I'm not losing my mind, and I don't feel like I'm recording this video as some last resort or last cry for help, or like channeling all my angst into this, because there are times when I wish I had this ability, and I do feel that way. But something I do notice is like this trend of recognizing the good things that you have, and then experiencing kind of the sadness, experiencing the sadness associated with the fact that you can't really, like, you can have them, but that state of having is always threatened, it's always it's in some sort of relative jeopardy. Even if you are experiencing this anxiety about losing this state of having decades before you actually lose it, you're still, that suffering, even if what the suffering is about doesn't come to reality, it's still suffering that you have to endure, because you don't know. And specifically this is about, it's like crossed over themes of mortality and of noticing like my family or like grandparents aging, and then also, even though I'm still like just incredibly young, and relative to that, it's like noticing that, or just being aware of how I'm getting older too, and sometimes feeling like an extreme amount of dread over the fact that like whatever things you do within a certain year are just, they're done, and then that's it, and they aren't happening anymore. Actually, I'm gonna go this way. Fuck, can I go this way? Go this way. Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's like I feel like we operate each day with this idea of like every movement is calculated for our benefit. But then it's like looking back, and it's such a stupid thing that is like can easily be encountered. But also, when it's bothering you, and it's real. I'm just able from this position to understand that it's stupid. But when it's destroying me, it is, and it's terrible. Like the things I did on October 14th, and you know, I probably spent that day like doing things with the purpose of like doing things that seemed correct and that seemed like the best thing to do, you know, and always thinking that way. But then like whatever goal was trying to be accomplished in my doing of those things, you know, now 2.5 months later, which is still such a short amount of time later, that isn't it's like no longer relevant, you know, and it just doesn't matter. And you can extend this back an actual substantial amount of time, because I know 2 months isn't, and you could apply this to other people's lives. And it's like it can be upsetting when you feel groundless. But what I don't understand is, why am I talking about this thing that I'm clearly stating isn't really applicable right now? Like this sense of loss of time and things isn't heightened right now in my mindset. Like I don't feel it right now. I've felt worse before, you know? I'm doing pretty good. So then it would make sense if I were to, you know, instead of talking about something that's a little distant from me, talk about exactly how I feel right now. And I think the reason for why I'm not doing that is that the way I feel now is a little bit trickier to identify and put into words, because while I do feel good, I don't have this overwhelming sense of like tranquility or peace or euphoria. It's not like overwhelming goodness in my head. It's, you know, it's closer to there than to overwhelming misery, but it's not there either. It's kind of mid-tier a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe it would make sense to just do the fucking work. Do the fucking work and talk about that. Even if it's harder to wrap up into a nice narrative and put a bow on it, you know, of like relating it to existential themes. It's a little bit more difficult. But I think it's meaningful because to try to discern that, because to use the term, if you think about it, it's arguably the case that the majority of my life, the majority of everyone's life, you know, related to their mental health, is spent, you know, neither at one pole or the other. The poles being, you know, rock bottom depression and, you know, manic euphoria. Most of our time we spend at neither. So it would be, you know, it would be interesting. Isn't that building? I thought that building was further north. Yeah, it would be interesting. Oh, I'm gonna wait for a second for these people. I think it would be meaningful to try to get at that. Like, what does that feel like when you're in the middle? And, you know, the only thing that immediately comes to mind is that it feels like much less. Like, much less that I desire to communicate, much less that I feel a strong conviction about. You know, I don't feel a strong conviction about this particular state of mind. I really don't. It isn't something that I have the urge to talk about passionately, but it's where I'm at. And I think I'm just considering this now, one of the ways maybe to go about it is to go over what do I think the pillars are of this like mid-level ground that I'm standing on. Because I feel like it's a lot of my mental state is reinforced like subconsciously by things that I hold on to as solid, even if I claim that they're not. Like, for example, my age, even though I'm aware that like there is some reality to someone's age, even though it's not as ubiquitous as people say it is. My age, sometimes I reassure myself that, you know, I'm 18, or I'm almost 19, but I'm 18, almost 19, and that's young. That's considered young, you know, to the average person. So that gives me, when I'm kind of reeling and I'm feeling like this wretched mind state that I'm in now is all that there will ever be, reminding myself of my young age, like, serves as an encouragement that things will change, you know, or that I have time for things to change. I still have time to experience things, because that is, you know, a fear of mine is to get to any point. It doesn't just have to be, you know, you're at your deathbed and you regret the way you live your life, because that's the classic trope. But even just you're at the end of a 3-day weekend and you regret the way that you spent it, because that's the same scope, just condensed, you know, condensed an entire life into a 3-day period. Even if you're still young, you shouldn't like lie back on that consolation that, oh, you know, I can be lazy and waste time and spend my time in less than fulfilling ways because I'm young. That shouldn't be how it is. I have this deep desire for it to be always good, and that causes pain, because as I realize it just can't be like that. It can't be always good, you know? The goodness can only exist in opposition to the ugliness. Well, that's the idea. And I think people console themselves with that thought, because it's like, it makes the suffering feel not without a purpose, you know? The suffering is enabling happiness. But on the same hand, it makes perfect sense that the happiness also enables the suffering, you know, because that's the way it is. And I think that's a reality that a lot of people, including myself, are a little bit afraid to face, because it fucking hurts. But I experience it all the time when I've just come out of, you know, an ugly mind state. The concern just crossed my mind that none of this audio is being picked up, only the footage. And that's scary. Yeah, but the concern, what was I saying? Like, if I'm coming out of a period of like whatever 3 or 4 days of like constantly thinking about emptiness and meaninglessness and how none of this shit we're doing is, you know, substantial. If I come out of that into like a graceful, happy period where I see the other side of things and I see the light, and I'm, you know, spending quality time with my family and my partner, and everything, listening to music and just feeling that thrill of being existent to consume all this shit and to create, you know, to give back. But you know, it always happens that not too long after that starts,
taking photos on this shit.
not too long after that starts, I start to feel the fear of losing that, you know? And it's something that I cling on to, and that causes suffering as a result. And then I start to head in the other direction. And it really, I mean, it would be easy for me to just say it's a cyclical thing that is just back and forth for eternity, and that's it. But I'm not sure that's the case, because it feels a little more nuanced than that. I'm not sure it's just suffering leads to happiness, leads to suffering leads to happiness, and so on. That's like, it's like cutting corners to say that, I think. A little bit more. Right. So it's like another thing is, I think I dealt with it this year. I dealt with this is like that sense of emptiness that comes when you realize that the way of orienting yourself is such that you're constantly trying to, like, you're envisioning a better life for yourself, and you're thinking about things you can do in order to achieve that. And it's not to say that that's pointless, and certainly that way of thinking has helped millions of people, and probably helped myself too. But I think what isn't, the caveat that isn't considered, is that even if you do achieve all of those things you said you would, like, it won't lead to like indefinite well-being, an indefinite sense of okayness, you know? Like, that just, it doesn't seem like something you can get. So yeah, it's not to say that you shouldn't try better. You should. You just need to do it with the understanding that it won't be everything, you know? It's not going to be everything without way of living. It's going to be like noticeably less than everything, which is everything, you know? Like there isn't any there really isn't anything that's everything. And it's, at times it seems like the best you can do is to like just like pick up and consume like bits and pieces of things that make you happy as well as like stimulate you intellectually, and ideally they do both. It's like a hybrid that does both. But you're gonna, it feels like to me, I experience misery or suffering a little bit when I expect that incorporating those things into my lifestyle will, like, make me okay, or like transcend something, or become transcendental. And this is a difficult subject because it isn't, it's closer to that than the opposite. Like incorporating reading into your lifestyle, or like things I do, like playing chess or reading or whatever, like watching shit. Like it's so fucking good. It's so deeply good and exciting and fun and interesting and rewarding. It's just that you can't cling too much onto that. That won't get you there. But like nothing will though. But like I remember, hearing, for example, like Ben Bennett would say that, like nothing will. And I'm not simply emulating his voice. I know what I'm doing right now is completely like the same shit he does, but I'm doing it out of like a deep conviction that this will be fulfilling to me as well, so in that sense it's my thing, it doesn't feel like copying. But he would say, nothing will get you there, nothing, and that would bother me deeply. And now as I say it, I'm not really bothered by it at all, I'm like I just understand that like that's the case, and you just have to do what you have to do, and you have to do your thing. But then it's like, I don't know, there isn't any way. And if we start getting into the territory of like where like I'm like acting like someone who can advise you, then that's the wrong way to go, because I don't know if I really can. Probably not. I'm 18. I haven't like I have yet to have those like grand life experiences. Like I have yet to live independently, other than like for a few months in a dorm by myself, but like like live independently and be funding everything. That's something I haven't done. But I also feel that like while that will be like, it'll give me discipline and rigor, and it'll offer something to me, like there will be something to find in that. But I also feel, before even experiencing it, I kind of feel like that isn't going to change anything either. Like it's still going to be nothing and everything at the same time, and that's it. Like it won't. I don't think there's like this thing that has yet to be like, or this like completely alternate worldview or like state of mind that has yet to be opened up to me. I just don't know that exists really, I'm gonna go this way. Like I don't know if that's something that can be gotten at for me. But at the same time, it's like if I think about the way that I feel about shit, and the way that I orient myself, and the way that I say, the way that I say how things are at this point, at the end of 2022, and even looking back just 2 years, at the end of 2020, it's so completely different. But even as I say that, I realize I don't have like a clear vision, like a clear memory or recollection, or like a reference point of exactly how I felt about things at the end of 2020. I can only say that with confidence about how I feel now. And as time goes on, the way you felt about things at any point in time, like the clarity of that decreases with the time between then and now. Like the clarity of how I feel about my situation and about the world is, you know, as clear as possible now, and in a month from now it'll be slightly less clear, and then 10 years from now it'll be, you know, less clear than ever. And I mean, maybe that's a little bit like, maybe I'm cutting a corner by painting it as like a linear a thing that decreases linearly, because maybe that's a little bit too easy. Maybe it bumps up and down, but overall the trend is kind of, you know, a gradual decrease, I'm assuming, because I don't, you know, I know that in early 2021 I was like, you know, I wasn't just like a zombie. Like, I was thinking about things a lot, and I considered that I had like a strong idea, at least, of like what was right and wrong in my life, and in like in my, you know, in my little radius, and like in whatever radius is bigger than that, or radii bigger than that. But now it's like so like spotty. So I try to access that, you know? It's like so it's so incredibly like faint, and I'm kind of like grasping at straws to figure out what the fuck I thought, you know? What I thought, or how I thought things were. But another thing that I'm thinking of now, this is a little bit off track, but like, it's so incredibly therapeutic to do this, because I'm talking about things that have in the past like been deeply bothersome to me, you know? Like the fact that your disposition on the world as it stands now will be lost in a short amount of time, even by yourself, you know? And you'll lose touch with it completely. Like that's something that when I'm only thinking it, it's like it comes across as like extremely depressing and, you know, hard to deal with. But now it's like, well, as just the effect of having the medium be, you know, vocalization, like, makes it so much more manageable. It makes it a thing that's like not really bothering me, and I'm wondering if that seemingly good thing could have a little bit of like a dark tone to it, or a dark reality, because maybe the reason it doesn't feel as impactful on me while I'm saying it is because just the act of saying things like creates a distance. You know, just the act of saying things, it might create a distance between myself and the ideas being presented. But you think, how could that be? Because essentially, like, when I'm thinking, when I'm thinking these concepts, like, I'm thinking it in the same kind of terms. Like, I'm thinking essentially I'm thinking in English, you know? So it's like, what's the difference? But there is a difference, and I can't ignore that. So it's like, why does this represent the fact that this is less impactful, speaking this, does that represent like an alienation, you know? Does it just mean I'm alienated from this? I probably shouldn't be recording in a playground, because I am an adult now. Now that I'm 18, I have no more, you know? So, yeah, it doesn't. Maybe should I go into this park? I'll go. I'll look a little bit out of place, a little bit, especially with this fucking GoPro. Yeah, like there's like a greater distance between like myself and the concept. And why is that though? Does that, I think, you know, that just probably has to do with the fact that the words, like putting things into verbal context is like, that's like a minimizing thing, you know? Like, and you feel it, you know? Everyone feels that when that's why it's such a commonality to say like, words can't describe this, or like it's hard to describe it. To put it into words would be reducing it, because often it feels like that. And that's why like a medium of expression like music feels so much more like it gets at more, you know, like it resonates more if it's the right type of music and you're in the right state and it's the right person listening to it. Like the connection that can be made between just these sounds, even without words, you know, just these sounds, like the sounds alone, like I don't know, like they speak, and it's so fascinating to me. But then there's it's not that simple, because just the same way that sounds can connect to like these intricate, profound subject matters, so can words in the way that if you've been speaking a language for your entire life, it's so deeply rooted, like there's an automatic connection between the words your brain hears and the symbols associated with them, which is why something like a medium like poetry can be so impactful, because it's like tossing these words around with all of their like kind of like infinitely spreading out, like all their infinite in potential like interpretations that someone can have of them, you know, like, so it becomes like, and I think people notice that in that form, like whereas in like a novel or narrative, it's much closer to a situation where everything is being told to you, although there's still some like iceberg effect and there's still a lot of reading between the lines. With poetry, it's like the majority of it is just like it's minimal in what it gives you, but it creates this like non-subtlety of like, obviously the effect is supposed to be in the way that these words strike meaning to you. So to write words off as like or to write like verbal communication or like literature, or just using, you know, words, to write those things off as like a suboptimal way of communicating something relative to music is like a little bit it's a little bit, I don't want to be too quick to do that, because it's not really true. Like, I think it's true like in casual speak, because in the majority of like casual conversations between people, you know, things, obviously it would be cringy if they were, they aren't being planned and sculpted in order to like create like a artistic impact on the person, you know. So that's why there can, you know, you can sense like an emptiness in the words that we say sometimes, whereas like poetry, for example, is deliberate, and so the emptiness is like minimized. But like, I don't know, it's an interesting topic. I don't understand how this battery is at 11% and I've only been going 39 minutes. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I buy the SD card. I just got this thing 2 days ago. I bought the fucking card yesterday and I had to go to like multiple places. And then today they tell me the thing doesn't work. It's just, yeah, tech is frustrating, but if you're able to do just enough to get it to work, the rewards are huge, you know? Like, this is, you know, after I've grown comfortable with this, it'll be something that I can just like, I have all the optimal shit or whatever. I can just set it up and go out, and 98% of the time it'll be in a setting with less people and less obstacles. So it's like, I'm not gonna have to be, well, I'm actually not, I don't know. I was gonna say I won't have to be like self-conscious about what I'm doing, but I'm not very, you know, even in the middle of Manhattan, because it's like, it's very clear that like everyone has their, you know, this is like the stereotype, everyone has their own shit going on, and so as a result no one cares what you're doing. Yeah, so maybe it's like the idea that this is like the most under the surveillance place to do it isn't true, because maybe some other smaller city towns where everyone knows each other will be looked at more strangely than this. But it doesn't really matter, you know. This is at 7%. I don't like. Maybe I can actually hold on. I'm gonna try to sit down, and I'm actually gonna see if I can get this. Holy shit! This is a big deal, because this is my first video. I'm liking the way it's turning out. A little concerned that some of the audio, like right now, I'm pretty confident that what I'm saying is being heard. But when I was over in Chinatown, it's like you don't know, you know. So I'm gonna set this here just for a second and get the portable out. Yeah, so I'm devoting the portable battery to this and not my phone. So that's a decision, but hopefully it's the right one. I think it is. I can charge my phone. Yeah, so we're gonna plug this in. And then this is still going. Oh my god, I got it. It's so, okay, never mind, it's not that difficult. I was gonna say it's so difficult to get the thing open. I'm learning, you know? Is that, yeah, let's see. I think it should be charging. If this is plugged in. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind. Dear viewers, I'm losing my mind. Okay, that's, you know, that's as good. That's all I can do. So hopefully that works. And if it doesn't, then if it gets lower than 2%, I'll just stop it so I don't lose the footage. I probably wouldn't. Yeah. Another thing I've been thinking about is like how quickly, like when someone's, or, I mean, this is really just about myself, but it seems like something that a lot of people feel. How quickly someone's like, when your circumstances change, like, this is so much less subtle with the charger, whatever. Like when you go through a change in circumstances, how quickly you like revert to normalcy and like revert to like baseline, just like everything's standard. And it's also like why is that? I'm bringing this up without having like currently like a conviction about it. Like, it isn't like this great mystery I need to solve, but it's something that I notice, and like if I'm in like a less than like great mindset, it can bother me a little bit. The fact that like a set of circumstances that you may have looked forward to for a while can arrive and then be disappointing in that you quickly become accustomed to them, and then there's no more novelty. It's like novelty is like so thin and shallow, you know. And like that's it. Yeah, so that can bother me. But I guess it's like, I mean, this is almost like, I feel like to make this make sense, I have to say this, but it's like not that interesting because I've talked about this too much. But it's the idea that like a lot of the pleasure, like the allotted pleasure in one thing, is a lot of it is spent in your anticipation of it, and it's something that kind of seems to be the case, you know. Like when you spend years or whatever, weeks and weeks looking forward to something, you create you necessitate like a certain level of quality in that thing when it does arrive. And then it's often the case that that thing doesn't live up to that quality. But like, I'm saying this without really like without really like relating to it as the truth, you know? Like, I'm not exactly sure that this is actually the case, because you would think that if the pleasure of something is, you know, wasted, you could say, or just experienced in the anticipation of it, then wouldn't it, like the inverse of that is like, you know, knowing that something ostensibly good is on the horizon, like an event or like whatever is happening in your life, and rather than for using this philosophy, rather than waste that pleasure, instead one approach would be to refrain from thinking about it at all, you know, like don't think about it, and just like have the discipline to not waste that excitement, and then leave all of the pleasure and excitement that is associated with that thing for the time that you actually experience it. But then there's a certain deliberacy in that, where it's like you're trying to create a loophole around these brain chemicals and these events and the way they're tied. And part of me suspects that in that deliberacy of like trying to create that loophole, it can't really work. Like that's a little bit unrealistic to expect that to work. Like that would be too easy, you know. And I mean, but I say this like without being really like well versed on this subject, because it's something that I've thought of, but for whatever reason I've never like put it to the test. Like, it's just something I'm really looking forward to. I've never deliberately tried to like discipline myself into not thinking about it and then seen the results. So I can't really say, you know. It's interesting though, because it ties into this like kind of greater thing about like pleasure and happiness being like kind of like a currency, or like the greatest currency there is, or even if you don't want to see it as a currency, because in many ways it's not. In many ways it is, but there's several ways where it's not. Like, even if you don't see it that way, it's like happiness and all that comes under the umbrella of it are kind of like, they kind of feel like the goal to like everybody, you know. And like, even if like you argue that like, you know, the modern like goal is money, but the money is pursued with the conception that it will lead to happiness, you know. This is so simple. Like, this is very, I don't know, I think it's worth talking about though, like, because it's how it feels, you know. like it's like a drug, you know? It's like when I have that, when I'm listening to music, back up cars, and I feel so deeply that everything's okay, you know? And like I'm so enthralled in that. And recently I've developed an awareness of like kind of like the transience or like the fleetingness of like those mind states, which like it blunts it a little bit, but you know, on the upside it also blunts the depressed mind state. So I'm like far less susceptible to like any spirals or like any falling into like a lasting depression or a lasting like a period of existential dread or like confusion. Like I'm far less susceptible to that now than I was last year or even 6 months ago, because like I recognize kind of the back and forthness of the whole thing, and kind of anticipating that I would eventually recognize that, I was a little like bothered by that prospect, because I thought that would you know, that would definitely result in me feeling like an alienating detachment from like what was once so real, like what was once so real in my like being enthralled in my happiness, and then like my misery on the flip side. Like what was once so real in that, I was worried that they would both become just like empty and like bland and like, and there would be nothing. But what's interesting is like now that I feel like I've gotten there is that I've realized there's actually there's more than just like there's more to it than just like there's, you know, there's the one mindset and then there's the flip side. Like there's somewhere not in between and not inside and not outside, but just like entirely different, where you like your commitment to not clinging on to these things, whether it's like delivered or not, it thrusts you into like a different headspace almost. But like I'm a little wary saying that, because that sounds like, it sounds a little bit like it's actually it sounds a little bit like it's more of like a stark difference than it is, because it's really not. Well, this thing, I plugged this in and now it's just perpetually at 4%. Like it isn't losing or gaining any battery, which is that's kind of great. I think in 13 minutes it's supposed to just conk out anyway, so I have that much time to get through with what I'm saying. Let me put my glove on. Like, and so, I mean, you know, I'm still trying to understand this myself. It's like I'm kind of oh my god, dude. I think holy shit. I think, okay, so my dad gave me, I lost one of my gloves, right? And he gave me, oh my god, they're in the camera. He gave me one of his, or he gave me a pair of his that he had spare in the car. And he was like, don't fucking lose it, because I know you're gonna lose my shit, because you have in the past. Like I lost like something, I think I lost like a hat like 5 years ago or something. And I was like, I'm not gonna lose it, you know. And I'm pretty sure, I'm now discovering that I did. I think it fell out of my pocket. Oh my god. Okay, well I'm gonna deal with that after this is done. But yeah, it's like still being this transformation I'm describing, kind of like I'm still in the midst of it, but I even in the midst of it, I'm like choosing to make conclusions on the way it is. And I think the way it is like, because it's like, I feel less of an attachment to the good and the bad. I don't know, because I was just saying that I was fearful that that lack of attachment to the good or the bad, to, you know, neither the good nor the bad, would lead to like a sense of emptiness in the whole thing. But that there's a little bit more. But now I'm you know, I'm about to say that it's still like net zero. Like there's really no change. Like it's like this. It's like the same problems, just in like a different formation, you know. Which is like kind of unfortunate, or it feels unfortunate. But I also don't like. But like following the same trend. What I'm saying right now, I don't feel an attachment to as the truth. And that like creates a sense of like goodness, you know? Yeah, it's still 4%. Yeah, like my whole theory of like it being net zero, like I don't feel like that's something that's like, instead of that feeling like something that's like deeply encompassing me and like concretizing like my circumstances, or like just mental structures under which I'm operating, it feels a little bit like the other way around. Like I am the one, like I'm the one creating that idea. Which, you know, even that is a little difficult to say with like confidence or conviction, because these ideas aren't just like, it's not like I'm just pulling things out of my ass in order to have something to like talk about. It's like these are my attempts of verbalizing like it's my attempt of verbalizing these thought patterns, you know. So it's like there's some reality to it, but you know, tying back to the theme of language having a reducing effect, like when I put it in these terms and like present it to you, like I feel a little alienated from that. I feel like that's like less than the truth. And so as a result, I said, you know, I'm kind of on top of that idea rather than that idea being on top of me, which is like, maybe that's like compensating for like feeling a little weird. But wow, this building is really fucking tremendous. You know, I've been here a million times, but like, holy shit. It's really it's a big building. All right, sit for a second. There's only 8 minutes left on this recording, I think. Yeah, I cannot believe I lost that glove. That's like really shitty. Yeah, I don't know. I do feel that when I'm like this format of talking about this shit, I mentioned this in Chinatown. It creates an effect of like me not being not being fully with it, you know? Like this is just, it's like describing like I'm a therapist describing a patient's condition after garnered like a deep understanding of it, like after having worked with them for many years, and now I know exactly like I understand their problems and things. Because there's also a part of me that's like none of this is as it is, and when I just inevitably in my like describing it in words, like it gives it a realness that like isn't really felt, you know. It's like I'm like, in order just to communicate anything here, I need to like cut corners. Like that's the only way I can communicate anything. And without doing that, like, it's like I would be communicating the same thing by just like grunting, you know. But that's not true. That's like that's like kind of an like it's like I'm like just alluding to some like niche performance art like stereotype, you know. Like I don't know if I really feel that way, that grunting would be the same as this. But I do understand the idea behind, like, I do understand the idea that is at play when someone says something like that and they mean it. Like there's no difference. Like I completely get that, you know. And that's why like something like when Ben Bennett does like here I am talking about him, when he does Sitting and Smiling, it's like, you know, it for so long to me, and like still for like the majority of people, it just makes no sense, you know. Like it's just like, what the fuck is this? But then it's like, it's actually not that like, it's not that like deep, like it's not that deep, you know. Like it's not that deeply layered. You don't have to dig that far to find like a reason, if you want to cling on to a reason behind it. Like it's just like I mean, he said it, like the idea is that there's no difference between that and anything else, you know. But at the same time, like that's ostensibly like that's something that's missing on YouTube, which is hilarious because like those are two completely like contradicting statements, which is another allusion to just like the contradictory shitness of like this whole thing. So it's like, I don't know. I don't want to just talk about that though. This is like, I don't know. This does feel just doing this feels fulfilling because it's like, I mean, I've always understood that like allure to like why one would want to do this. It's like you set like you're setting the complete scene. No one else is speaking to you, but there's a clear difference between like just being inside and thinking to yourself. There's a school bus, wow. Like there's such a difference between doing that and being in public amongst people and talking out loud and being visible to people and being audible to people and having these ideas being like, obviously like no one really cares, but like it's possible that someone could listen if they were walking by me, you know. And not that like I have this, part of this purpose isn't to like spread this to other people, but it's just like, it's the fact that like I have the control right now to like just like completely control the circumstances, but still be like integrated with the rest of the world. Is it still on? It's still on. It's at 5%. Oh my god. It just hit an hour. I'm not really too happy with like the landscape that I ended up following. Like I think I went into kind of like, I don't know. I would have liked like I think the Chinatown footage was probably visually interesting, but the past like 20 minutes or half hour or so like the footage hasn't been as much because it's just like, I don't know. It's like winter gardens, like Christmas decorations stuff, which is like serves a purpose, but isn't like, I don't know. It's not like captivating to me, but that's okay. It's more about the words, dude. Yeah. So yeah, I guess this is like, because I'm on a ticking time bomb of like 2 minutes. I guess it's actually a good conclusive subject, like talking about why this feels meaningful. And like my dad said this, he said this morning, we were talking about how, you know, he goes to the studio and he hadn't been in like 3 days, and he's feeling so antsy and frustrated because of that. And he's like it's like he says this in a way of like making fun of himself, or like making fun of like someone who would say this genuinely, but he was like other people need food and water and I need creative time, like I need creative me time, which is like obviously he sets it up in a sarcastic way, but like there's some reality to it, you know. And I feel a little bit like I'm developing into someone who needs that too, or like not a little bit, like I think that's really how it is, but it's not, but it's like I don't need to be like producing, you know, like if I'm like consuming content that's like stimulating to me, even if it's like I'm in the consumption position, like it still feels meaningful, you know. You don't have to be like making art to be fulfilled. I mean, that's one way, but it's like you know what's fulfilling to you, and if you don't, you should figure it out, because that's where the good stuff's at. That's what I have to say. And I think this was an interesting first time really doing this, you know. I've done it for like 15 minutes before, but first time doing this for like an hour or longer duration. So that will be all. Until next time. Goodbye.